I never thought a single piece of paper, or rather the absence of one, could make me feel like the ground had been ripped from under me. But here I was, sitting on my worn-out couch, staring at my phone, scrolling through pictures of my sister Emily's engagement party. Everyone I knew from high school, college, and even my current job had posted about it. Everyone, that is, except me. I hadn't received an invitation. Not in the mail, not by email, not even a text. At first, I tried to tell myself it was just an oversight. Maybe Emily thought I'd RSVP last minute. Maybe it got lost in the mail. But when I checked the photos, my heart sank. There she was, smiling in that perfect, sunlit dress, standing next to someone who, for me, represented betrayal. My ex-best friend, Lauren. The same Lauren who had spread a lie about me in our sophomore year of college, who had taken credit for my project, who had pretended to be my friend while systematically undermining me at every turn. And now she was going to be my sister's maid of honor. I slammed my laptop shut, and my cat, Mr. Whiskers, jumped in fright. I didn't even notice him at first. My mind was a whirlwind of disbelief and anger. How could Emily, my sister, who knew everything, invite her to play such an important role in one of the biggest days of her life? Did our years of closeness mean nothing? I thought back to the last time Lauren and I spoke. It had been a heated argument over something trivial. She claimed she had grown up, and that I should just move on. But betrayal doesn't age out like milk. You don't just walk away from someone taking something that matters to you and expect forgiveness to be automatic. And Emily had seen it happen. She knew how much it hurt. Yet here we were, a few years later, and I was missing the party, the celebration, and apparently a place in her wedding. I wanted to call her, demand an explanation, but something held me back. What could I even say that wouldn't make me look petty? Hey, thanks for replacing me with the person who ruined my life. I knew it would sound bitter, but staying silent wasn't easy either. Each notification, each photo, each status update on social media was a knife twisting in my chest. I wanted to scream, but my apartment was empty except for Mr. Whiskers, and I couldn't risk waking my neighbors at 11 p.m. By the next morning, my anger had transformed into a peculiar mix of hurt and determination. I decided I needed answers. I called my mom first. Mom, is Lauren going to be at the wedding? I tried to keep my voice calm, but it came out tight, strained. Oh, honey, Mom said, her voice hesitant. Emily really wants Lauren there, she said. She's changed, and she wants everything to be perfect. I felt my chest tighten. Changed? People don't change overnight, especially not someone like Lauren. And perfect? Perfect for whom? Not for me, apparently. After the call, I sat down and stared at my reflection in the dark window. I couldn't decide if I was angry at Emily, at Lauren, or at myself for even caring. A sense of betrayal that ran deep in my veins was now tangled with guilt, and I hated how powerless I felt. I had always been the sister who supported Emily through everything. Boyfriends, college crises, heartbreaks, even her small rebellions that irritated Mom and Dad. And now, when it mattered most, when loyalty should have meant something, I was being erased from the story. The next days were a blur. I scrolled through wedding planning posts on Emily's social media feed. I saw Lauren trying on dresses, practicing speeches, posting selfies tagged with hashtags like #bridesmaidgoals and #squadup. Each post felt like a personal insult. Every comment, every, sisters, or you two look perfect together, made my stomach twist. And yet, I couldn't stop looking. I tried to reach out to Emily. I sent her a long text. Can we talk? I feel hurt and confused. I don't understand why Lauren is part of the wedding party. This really matters to me. Hours passed. No reply. Then a short message. I love you, but this is my decision. Hope you understand. Understand? I wanted to scream. I wanted to shake her and demand. Do you even remember what she did to me? How can you just forget that? But I didn't. Instead, I sat there, reading and rereading her message, feeling my anger simmer into something darker. Something that whispered, maybe I don't belong at this wedding at all. That night, I made a decision. I wasn't going to let this happen. I wasn't going to watch my sister give her most important day to someone who had broken my trust and pretend everything was okay. I knew there would be backlash. I knew my family would call me selfish, cruel, maybe even petty. But I also knew I couldn't step into that church with a smile and act like nothing mattered. So here I am, sitting in my apartment, staring at a calendar with the wedding date circled in red. And I have to ask myself, AITA, if I refuse to attend my sister's wedding? Because right now, the only thing I'm certain of is that walking away might be the only way I protect myself. It wasn't just the wedding invitation, or lack thereof, that gnawed at me. It was the memory of that day years ago, the day Lauren had made it clear that friendship wasn't something she valued. College had been a fresh start for both of us, full of late-night study sessions, group projects, and shared laughter. I thought we were inseparable. I thought she had my back, just as I had hers. But that illusion shattered faster than I could even process. It started with a group project in sophomore year. Our task was to develop a marketing campaign for a local startup. I had poured my heart into it, brainstorming, designing, and writing most of the content. I trusted Lauren to handle the presentation, thinking she would highlight our combined effort. Instead, she took full credit, subtly twisting details to make it seem like I had contributed minimally. When the professor praised her presentation, she smiled at me, pretending everything was fine. But I knew exactly what she had done. I confronted her privately. Lauren, I did all the work. How can you just take it like it's yours? I remember my voice shaking with frustration and hurt. Her response still haunts me. You worry too much. It's not like it mattered. Move on. Move on. Betrayal doesn't just vanish when someone tells you to forget. I had trusted her, confided in her, shared my insecurities and dreams. And she had weaponized that trust, twisting it into a wedge between me and my own success. I remember telling Emily everything afterward. She had always been my sounding board, the one who could make sense of the chaos. I expected her to be outraged, to defend me. But Emily's reaction was different. She didn't dismiss it entirely. She was disappointed, of course. But she also urged me to forgive, to not let this ruin your college experience. At the time, I had tried. I tried to smile through it, to let it go. But the wound never healed. It was a quiet, persistent ache, a reminder that some people never change. So when I saw Lauren's name tagged as a bridesmaid on Emily's wedding posts, my chest tightened in disbelief. How could Emily, who had watched this unfold, decide to invite her into the inner circle of her most important day? It wasn't just about the betrayal, it was about the message it sent. That my pain, my experiences, were secondary to some misplaced notion of forgiveness or family harmony. I tried to see it from Emily's perspective. Maybe she really believed Lauren had changed. Maybe she wanted to avoid family drama. But no explanation, no justification could erase the sting. It felt like I had been erased, like my presence and history didn't matter. I reached out to some friends who had been there that day, hoping for some validation. Am I overreacting? I asked them, my fingers trembling over the keyboard. Their replies were unanimous. You have every right to feel betrayed. Lauren hasn't earned your trust again. Even my parents, who were usually mediators, seemed conflicted. Mom sighed when I tried to explain, saying, Emily just wants a perfect wedding. She doesn't mean to hurt you. But hurt was exactly what it felt like. I wasn't asking for perfection. I was asking for acknowledgement, for respect, for loyalty. And Emily's choices told me I wasn't going to get it. Over the next few days, I tried to brace myself for the inevitable confrontation. I rehearsed what I would say to Emily, tried to find the balance between honesty and composure. I feel hurt and excluded. I can't attend under these circumstances. Lauren betrayed me and I can't pretend it's okay. But even as I formed the words in my mind, doubt crept in. Was I making this about myself too much? Was I selfish for not just attending and keeping the peace? Then came a small miracle, or maybe just a twist of fate. One afternoon, I received a text from Emily. It wasn't the simple dismissal I expected, nor was it a warm attempt at reconciliation. Instead, it was a challenge, almost a test. I know you're upset. I understand. But think about what this wedding means to me. Can we find a way to handle this without destroying what we have? For a moment, I froze. She was acknowledging my feelings, yes, but she was also subtly pressuring me to set them aside. It was as if she was saying, "Your hurt matters, but not enough to interfere with my perfect day." I didn't know how to respond. Part of me wanted to explode, to type a response dripping with every ounce of anger and betrayal I felt. Part of me wanted to cry, to beg for recognition, for the sister I had always loved, to see that this wasn't just about a bridesmaid. It was about respect and trust. Instead, I sat there in silence, letting the words settle in. I realized then that the wedding wasn't just a celebration for Emily. It had become a battleground, a test of loyalty, boundaries, and moral courage. And I had a choice: to sacrifice myself for the sake of appearances or to stand firm, even if it meant being labeled selfish. That night, I looked at Lauren's posts again. Her smile was effortless, carefree, as if nothing had ever happened. And I felt a cold, hard resolve hardening inside me. I wouldn't be complicit. I wouldn't just show up, clap politely, and pretend everything was fine. A few days later, I decided to confront Emily once more. Not angrily, not desperately, but firmly. I needed her to understand why this mattered, why I couldn't just let the past be buried beneath flowers, dresses, and champagne. Because if she truly valued our relationship, she would see that it wasn't about revenge. It was about boundaries, dignity, and respect. I still didn't know how she would respond. And in the silence of my apartment, I realized that this confrontation would define not just the wedding day, but the future of our sisterhood. After days of stewing in anger and frustration, I decided to take a small step. I needed to see everything for myself. Social media had become a minefield of wedding updates, and while I wanted to avoid it, I couldn't help but scroll through Emily's posts one night. That's when I discovered something that made my stomach drop like a lead weight. Lauren wasn't just a bridesmaid. She was the maid of honor. The person standing next to Emily during every important moment, the one giving the toast, the one holding the bouquet during photos. She was replacing me in a role I had imagined for years. Every laugh, every smile, every small gesture that should have been mine to share with my sister was now hers. I felt a wave of disbelief wash over me. I leaned back in my chair and tried to breathe, but it came in shallow, jagged gasps. How could Emily, who knew everything, who had watched Lauren hurt me so deeply, elevate her to this level of importance in her wedding? It felt like a personal betrayal, a deliberate erasure of my role in her life. I started calling mutual friends, people who had been at the engagement party, asking questions under the guise of casual curiosity. "So, Lauren's maid of honor, huh?" I asked one friend. They hesitated, then said, "Yeah, Emily really trusts her. She says Lauren's changed a lot, and she wants her close on the big day." I forced a laugh that didn't reach my eyes. "Changed, huh?" I muttered. "Yeah, sure." That night, I sat down and wrote Emily a message. A long one, pouring out everything I'd held inside for years. I recounted the betrayal, my hurt, my feelings of being excluded. I typed it all, then deleted it. I rewrote it, trying to sound calm, reasonable, and not accusatory, only to delete it again. Nothing felt right. Finally, I sent a version that was short but pointed. "Emily, I can't pretend everything's okay. Lauren was never someone I could trust, and now she's your maid of honor. I need to know why." The response came hours later. "I understand you're hurt. I just want a perfect day. I hope you can respect that. I love you." That message hit me harder than I expected. "Perfect day," she said. "Love you." But where was the recognition of my pain? Where was the apology for disregarding my feelings? I stared at my phone, wanting it to explode, wanting the words to burn on the screen and vanish. But there they were, cold, dismissive, and final. I realized then that this wasn't just about Lauren anymore. It was about Emily, about our relationship. The bond one thought we had, the closeness, the shared memories, they suddenly felt fragile, negotiable, like they could be swept aside for appearances. I spent the next few days thinking through every possible scenario. I could attend, smile, pretend to be happy, and hope that everything would settle afterward. Or I could refuse, draw a line, and risk being labeled selfish, petty, or even cruel. I weighed the options endlessly, replaying every conversation, every glance, every small betrayal in my mind. Finally, I knew what I couldn't do. I couldn't step into that church with a smile and pretend nothing had happened. I couldn't hand over my role, my place in Emily's day, to someone who had taken everything from me once and never made amends. I didn't want to be the villain in my own story, but I also couldn't be a silent victim. Then came another twist I hadn't anticipated. I started hearing whispers from family members, hints that Emily might not be as happy with her choice as she let on. My cousin mentioned, casually, that Emily had confided she was nervous about how the wedding party would get along. That maybe, just maybe, she'd underestimated the tension Lauren's presence would bring. A flicker of hope ignited inside me. Perhaps there was a way to resolve this without burning bridges completely. Perhaps Emily could understand my perspective if I found the right words, the right moment. But first, I needed more information. I started asking subtle questions, checking the guest list leaks, looking at photos, and even reaching out to mutual friends. Everything confirmed my worst fears, but also revealed unexpected details. Small acts of consideration, gestures from Emily that suggested she wasn't entirely blind to my feelings. It was complicated, more complicated than I had imagined. The betrayal wasn't a single event. It had grown into a tangled web of loyalties, misunderstandings, and unspoken resentments. And at the center of it all was me, stuck between my desire to protect myself and my desire to salvage my relationship with my sister. By the end of that week, I realized I was standing on a precipice. One step forward could mean reconciliation, one step back could mean complete estrangement. And Lauren? She didn't even know the storm she had brought into my life was about to hit. I clenched my fists, feeling a mix of dread and determination. The wedding day was approaching, and I had a choice to make. I could continue to suffer in silence, or I could confront the situation head-on, with all the consequences it entailed. For the first time in weeks, I felt a strange clarity. I didn't yet know what the outcome would be, but I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going to be passive anymore. The past had shaped me, hurt me, and tested me, but it wasn't going to define me. And with that, I began to plan my next move. I knew I couldn't wait any longer. The wedding was only weeks away, and the tension inside me had grown into a storm I couldn't contain. I had rehearsed my words countless times, trying to strike the balance between honesty and composure. I wanted Emily to understand, not to punish her, not to guilt-trip her, but to make her see how deeply her choice had hurt me. I called her one evening. The phone rang twice before she picked up. "Hey," she said, her voice light, almost cheerful. "Emily, we need to talk," I said, my voice steady, though my hands trembled. There was a pause. "Okay. What about?" I took a deep breath. "About the wedding. About Lauren. About me." Her voice faltered slightly. "I thought we already talked about this." "Yes, but I don't think you really understand. This isn't just about Lauren being in the wedding. This is about the betrayal she caused, and how much it hurt me. And now, seeing her as your maid of honor, I feel erased, Emily. Like everything I did for you, all the years I supported you, don't matter." There was silence on the other end. Then, softly, I didn't realize it felt that way to you." "It does," I said, voice rising slightly. "I tried to move on, I really did. But you knew what she did to me, and now you're letting her take the place that should have been mine. Don't you see how wrong that is?" Emily sighed, and I could hear the conflict in her voice. I know. I wanted everything to be perfect. I thought she had changed, and I thought maybe we could all get along. I didn't think it would hurt you this much." I swallowed hard, fighting back the lump in my throat. "Emily, it's not about her being changed. It's about trust. She broke that trust, and inviting her to this role isn't just naive. It's dismissive. You're dismissing my feelings. You're dismissing our relationship." Another pause. I didn't realize it would feel like that, she said again, almost whispering. I thought I was doing what was best for the wedding. But what about us? I demanded. What about your sister who has been there for you through everything? Doesn't that matter? I love you, she said, her voice cracking slightly. You know I do. I wanted to avoid drama. I wanted everything to go smoothly. I didn't want to choose sides, and I didn't want to hurt anyone. Well, congratulations, I said bitterly. You did. You hurt me anyway. There was silence. Then, softly, almost tearfully, Emily said, I didn't think it would matter this much. I thought you'd understand. I thought you'd forgive her. Forgive her, I repeated, disbelief lacing my words. Emily, I can forgive someone when they apologize, when they acknowledge the pain they caused. She hasn't done that. And you're asking me to pretend it never happened. I can't. I just wanted a perfect day, she whispered. And I wanted a perfect sister relationship, I said quietly, the fire in my chest softening into sadness. But I can't have that if my feelings don't matter. There was a long pause. I could hear her breathing, shaky, uneven. Finally, she said, So, you're saying you won't come? I hesitated, feeling the weight of the words. I had thought about this moment endlessly. I don't know, I admitted. I need time to think. I need you to understand why I feel this way before I can make any decisions. Okay, she said softly. I guess I have a lot to think about too. We ended the call shortly after, but the silence that followed wasn't peaceful. It was heavy, suffocating. I sat on my couch, Mr. Whiskers curled beside me, and stared at the ceiling. The confrontation had opened a door, yes, but it hadn't solved anything. It had revealed just how fragile our relationship had become, how easily it could fracture under pressure. I realized that this wasn't just a battle over a wedding. It was a test of loyalty, of boundaries, of respect. And the outcome was uncertain. Emily loved me, I knew that. But love, I realized, wasn't always enough. Not when past betrayals and unspoken resentments were involved. Over the next few days, I tried to gather my thoughts. I reflected on our conversation, replaying her words, her pauses, the almost imperceptible tremble in her voice. She wasn't heartless, far from it. But she had made a choice that hurt me deeply, and I couldn't ignore that. Then, one evening, I received a message from Lauren. My heart skipped a beat, a mixture of dread and disbelief flooding through me. Hey, just wanted to say I'm really excited for Emily's wedding. Hope we can finally get along this time. I stared at the screen, feeling a wave of anger rise. This wasn't excitement, it was audacity. She had no idea how much she had damaged my life. And now, she was smugly inviting me to pretend everything was fine. I realized then that my next move would be crucial. I had to decide whether to confront Lauren directly, to protect myself and my dignity, or to focus on Emily, trying to repair the bond that now felt strained beyond measure. One thing was certain. I couldn't remain passive. I couldn't allow this betrayal to continue shaping my life without fighting for my place in it. The clock was ticking, and the wedding was drawing closer. And with every passing day, the question loomed larger. AITA if I refused to attend? Or would standing my ground make me the villain in my own story? After the confrontation with Emily, I thought the hardest part was over. I was wrong. Almost immediately, the ripple effect of my decision, or even my hesitation, began spreading through our circle of family and friends. The first message came from my cousin, Jenna. She tried to soften it, but her words still stung. Hey, I know you're upset about Lauren, but Emily really wants you there. Can't you just put this behind you for one day? I stared at the screen, reading it over and over. Put it behind me? I whispered to myself. It sounded so simple, so easy for people who hadn't been hurt. But to me, it wasn't just a wedding. It was recognition, or the lack of it, of everything that had happened and everything I had endured. Then came a few texts from mutual friends. Their messages were polite but firm, all variations of the same sentiment. You're making this bigger than it needs to be. It's Emily's day. Can't you just go? I felt like the world was spinning in slow motion. Everyone expected me to forgive, forget, and smile, all while the person who had betrayed me sat in a position of honor. I wanted to scream, to lash out, to explain, but the words felt inadequate. No one could truly understand the history, the depth of the betrayal except Emily herself. And she hadn't yet. Family gatherings became awkward almost instantly. At Sunday dinner, my aunt casually mentioned the wedding plans, gushing about Lauren's speech. I forced a smile, nodded, said something neutral, but inside I felt a storm brewing. I was surrounded by people who were choosing to ignore my pain, as if it didn't matter. Then came my mom. She cornered me gently in the kitchen. "Honey, I know you're upset," she said softly, "but Emily is your sister. She loves you. She just wants everything to be perfect. You don't want to make her sad, do you?" I clenched my fists under the table, taking a deep breath. "Mom, it's not about making her sad. It's about me being respected, about acknowledging that what Lauren did matters. And it's not just about one day, it's about the principle of loyalty and trust." Mom shook her head, sighing. "I understand, I really do. But can't you at least try to compromise?" I wanted to. I really did. But compromise here felt like erasing my own experiences, my own pain, for the sake of appearances. I couldn't do it. Not without resenting Emily, not without feeling like I had lost a part of myself. Word of my stance leaked faster than I expected. A few friends mentioned hearing rumors. "She's not going to the wedding. She's still upset about Lauren." Suddenly, my private turmoil became a public spectacle. People whispered behind my back, judging me without understanding the depth of my feelings. I started feeling isolated. Every text, every conversation, every social media post became a minefield. I couldn't talk to Emily without tension. I couldn't talk to Lauren without anger. Even friends and extended family were unsure which side to take. And the worst part? Emily didn't seem to notice how much damage was being done to our relationship. One evening, I decided to take a walk to clear my head. The air was cold, biting, but it cleared my mind. I thought about every argument, every betrayal, every attempt to reach Emily. I realized that this conflict wasn't just about a wedding or one person's actions. It was about my own boundaries, my sense of self, and my refusal to be erased. As I walked, my phone buzzed. It was a message from Lauren. I almost ignored it, but curiosity got the better of me. "Hey, I just wanted to say I really hope you come to the wedding. It would mean a lot to Emily. Can we start fresh?" I froze. "Start fresh," I muttered aloud. "You never even tried to make amends the first time." I considered replying, but didn't. There were no words that could convey my feelings without sounding bitter or vindictive. And maybe that was the point. Lauren hadn't changed, not in the ways that mattered. By the time I returned home, I had made a quiet resolution. I would not be passive. I would not allow anyone to pressure me into accepting something that felt wrong. And I would not allow my own feelings to be dismissed. The wedding was approaching, and I needed a plan. A way to confront not just Emily, but the entire situation, with clarity and integrity. Little did I know, the next few days would escalate even further. Whispers turned into confrontations. Friends tried to mediate. Even my parents felt torn between the sisters they loved. And Lauren? She was blissfully unaware of the storm brewing around her. The question loomed larger than ever. AITA, if I refuse to attend the wedding? Or is standing my ground my only way to protect myself? By the beginning of the next week, the situation had evolved into something I hadn't fully anticipated. The ripples of my decision not to blindly attend Emily's wedding had turned into small waves that threatened to become a tidal wave. Family members and friends started picking sides, and the tension was almost palpable in every interaction. It began subtly. Casual comments from relatives at dinner, lingering glances, and awkward silences whenever Lauren's name was mentioned. "She really deserves this role," my aunt had said, smiling at Emily. "She's such a sweet girl. You'll see. Sweet girl." My teeth clenched at the words. That sweet girl had destroyed my trust years ago. Yet now everyone acted as if nothing had ever happened. Friends started reaching out, not to comfort me, but to advise me. You need to let it go. Emily wants this, and it's just one day. One day. As if years of betrayal, pain, and erasure could be dismissed for a single wedding. The more people told me to compromise, the angrier I became. Not at them, but at the impossible expectations I was being asked to meet. Then came the whispers I dreaded most. One of Emily's friends, someone who had been at the engagement party, reached out. "People are talking," she said cautiously. "They're saying you might not come. Are you serious?" "Yes," I admitted. "I haven't decided yet, but I need my feelings to be considered." Her response was a mix of disbelief and pity. "Emily is really hurt. You have to think about her. It's her special day." It was exhausting. Every message, every conversation, every casual remark made me feel cornered. Yet deep down, I knew I couldn't bend. Not this time. Standing my ground had nothing to do with revenge or stubbornness. It was about boundaries, respect, and being seen as someone whose feelings mattered. At home, I spent long hours thinking about the upcoming confrontation. I couldn't avoid it forever. I needed to prepare, to anticipate every possible argument, every attempt to guilt me, and every pressure tactic. I wrote down my points, rehearsed conversations in front of the mirror, and imagined different outcomes. I had to be strong, articulate, and unshakable. Then came Emily herself, calling in the evening. "I think we need to talk again," she said, voice slightly strained. "Yes," I said, steeling myself. "We do." We spoke for nearly an hour. Emily tried to explain her choices, her desire for harmony, her insistence that Lauren had changed. I listened, responding calmly, yet firmly. "I hear what you're saying, Emily, but it doesn't change the fact that your decision hurt me. It doesn't erase the betrayal or the years of support I've given you. I need you to understand that before I can consider attending." There was a long silence, and finally she said, almost quietly, "I don't know what to do. I don't want to lose you, but I also don't want drama on my wedding day." "Emily," I said gently, but with resolve, "I'm not trying to create drama. I'm asking for acknowledgement. That's all. That's my line in the sand." The next day, I learned that whispers had turned into gossip. Mutual friends were discussing my stance openly, debating whether I was justified or selfish. I felt the weight of judgment pressing down on me. Every interaction became a minefield. Every casual comment felt like a loaded accusation. And then Lauren entered the scene, unaware of the storm her presence had ignited. She posted another cheerful message on social media. "Counting down the days. Can't wait to stand by Emily." The words mocked me in a way that no one else could understand. It wasn't just a wedding she was attending. It was a public declaration that my pain didn't matter, that my role in Emily's life could be replaced without consequence. I knew a decision had to be made soon. I couldn't wait for everyone else to dictate the outcome. I had to decide where I stood, how far I was willing to push, and what consequences I was prepared to face. This wasn't just a wedding. It was a defining moment for my relationship with my sister, my own sense of integrity, and my unwillingness to be erased. By the time I went to bed that night, my mind was made up. I wouldn't attend unless my concerns were genuinely heard and respected. I wouldn't bow to pressure from family or friends. And I wouldn't allow Lauren's presence to overshadow my voice in my sister's life. The lines were drawn, the sides were set, and the storm was building. The next few days would determine whether my stand would protect my dignity or break the bonds I had spent a lifetime cherishing. By midweek, the tension had become unavoidable. The whispers had turned into conversations, and conversations into arguments. People were picking sides, often without understanding the full picture. Even my closest friends seemed to waver, torn between wanting me to stand my ground and wanting Emily's wedding to go smoothly. It started with a text from my longtime friend, Sarah. "I get why you're upset, but maybe you should just go. It's Emily's day. Don't make this bigger than it has to be." I stared at it, feeling both anger and frustration. Bigger than it has to be? I muttered. Years of betrayal weren't bigger than they had to be. They were real, they were lasting, and they mattered. Then came another message from my friend Jake. Honestly, I think you're being reasonable. Emily should listen to you. Don't let them pressure you. I read that one over and over. Relief mixed with anxiety. At least someone understood, even if few did. At family dinner that night, the tension became almost tangible. My uncle made an offhand comment about weddings being family first, feelings later. And my parents exchanged worried glances. I realized that this wasn't just a personal conflict anymore. It was a family crisis in miniature. People were taking positions, forming alliances, and it was only a matter of time before sides hardened completely. Emily herself tried to intervene. I don't want to fight, she said softly, eyes avoiding mine. I just want everyone to be happy. Can't we find a compromise? I shook my head, fighting the lump in my throat. Emily, I can't compromise on this. Not without acknowledgement. Not without respect. It's not about drama. It's about trust and loyalty. You're asking me to forget the past and ignore my own pain. I can't do that. Lauren, blissfully unaware of the tension, continued posting cheerful updates on social media. Each one felt like a challenge, a deliberate reminder that my absence or my presence was now politicized. Friends commented, laughed, and tagged her photos, creating a contrast between her perfect happiness and my growing anger. Then, unexpectedly, a cousin reached out privately. Look, she said cautiously. I think you have a point. Emily's trying to make everything perfect, but you've been hurt. Don't feel guilty for standing up for yourself. Her words were a bomb, but they also highlighted the growing divide. Family members were forming factions. Some quietly supportive, some pressuring me to attend, some siding with Emily, some neutral but gossiping anyway. I realized that attending or not attending wouldn't just affect my relationship with Emily. It would ripple through the entire family dynamic. I spent that night reflecting. I wanted to approach Emily one more time, to try and explain my perspective in a way that might resonate. But I also knew that Lauren's presence had become a symbol of betrayal, of favoritism, of unresolved hurt. Even if Emily listened, I couldn't ignore the fact that the person who had caused so much pain would still occupy a central role in her life. The next morning, a mutual friend called me. People are talking, they said. Some are saying you're being selfish. Some say you're standing up for yourself. Honestly, it's chaos. I sighed, feeling the weight of it all. Chaos indeed. Every message, every conversation, every family interaction had become a battlefield. And while I wanted to do the right thing to preserve my relationship with my sister, I also had to protect my dignity. By the end of the day, I made a decision. I would confront Emily one last time. Not angrily, not to guilt her, but firmly, with clarity. I needed her to see my perspective fully, to understand the depth of my hurt, before I made any final decisions about the wedding. That evening, I sat down with my phone, rehearsing what I would say. I wanted to be articulate, unshakable, and honest. I wanted to communicate that this wasn't about revenge, or about making her day difficult, but about boundaries, respect, and trust. The storm was reaching its peak. Friends and family were now openly divided. Conversations were tense, alliances forming. Lauren remained oblivious, happily counting down the days, posting pictures that seemed to mock the tension she had indirectly created. And I knew that the next confrontation, the next words exchanged with Emily, could define everything. Whether our relationship survived, whether I maintained my self-respect, and whether I walked into the wedding or walked away forever. The lines were drawn, the sides were set, and the emotional battlefield was ready. By the weekend, the tension surrounding the wedding had reached a boiling point. Friends and family weren't just whispering behind my back anymore. They were openly pressuring me, each interaction a reminder that my decision had turned into a full-blown controversy. The first blow came from my aunt, who cornered me in the kitchen during a family brunch. "Honey, Emily is upset," she said, voice low but insistent. "Can't you just put this behind you?" One day, Can't you make her happy for a few hours? I felt my stomach knot. It's not that simple, I said, my voice firmer than I expected. It's not just one day. It's about respect, trust, and being acknowledged. I can't pretend that none of this ever happened. Her expression softened, but the message was clear. My refusal to compromise was making me the problem. She walked away, shaking her head, leaving me feeling cornered and scrutinized by everyone else around the table. Then my phone buzzed. It was Sarah. Look, I know you think you're right, but this is getting out of hand. Everyone's talking. Emily's really hurt. Can't you just go? I wanted to scream. I typed a reply, deleted it, typed again. Eventually, I wrote, I hear you, but it's not about being right. It's about being seen and respected. I can't just ignore that. The reply never came. The next few days were a blur of text messages, social media posts, and conversations that seemed to serve only to weigh me down. Every friend, every cousin, every well-meaning family member had an opinion, and almost all of them involved me letting it go for the sake of Emily's perfect day. Even my parents, usually pillars of support, struggled. My mom tried to mediate carefully. Sweetheart, Emily just wants everything to be perfect. Can't you compromise for her sake? I clenched my fists. Mom, it's not about perfection. It's about fairness and respect and loyalty. If I compromise now, I'm erasing myself for the sake of appearances. Dad remained quiet, watching the exchange, his expression unreadable. It was clear he was worried about the fallout, but he couldn't argue with the truth of my words. As the days ticked closer to the wedding, the pressure became relentless. Every dinner, every casual gathering, every conversation was a subtle or not so subtle attempt to push me toward compliance. It wasn't just emotional anymore. It felt like a social siege. Then came Lauren's posts. Bright, cheerful, tagged with Emily, tagged with everyone else in our circle. Can't wait to celebrate. Hashtag Maid of Honor goals, hashtag Emilis Day. Her smile seemed to mock the tension that had enveloped my life. I wanted to respond, to confront her directly, but I knew it would only escalate the conflict without addressing the root issue. Emily's decision. A friend, seeing my frustration, tried to give perspective. Maybe it's not worth losing the relationship over one day, she said. But it was worth it. It wasn't just one day. It was years of unacknowledged pain, years of betrayal, and now the erasure of my place in the life of someone I loved deeply. I realized I wasn't just fighting for myself. I was fighting for my dignity, for the recognition that my feelings mattered. By Thursday, the emotional tension was unbearable. Even casual encounters with family and friends felt like navigating a minefield. Every glance carried judgment. Every comment carried subtle criticism. I felt isolated, misunderstood, and increasingly determined not to compromise unless my concerns were genuinely acknowledged. That evening, I sat down to write one final message to Emily before making any definitive decision about attending. I needed clarity, honesty, and acknowledgement. I poured my heart into every word, explaining not just my hurt over Lauren, but the deeper impact her choices had on our sisterly bond. I pressed send and waited, heart pounding. The reply came hours later, short but heavy with implication. I didn't realize how deeply this affected you. We need to talk in person. A flicker of hope sparked. Maybe, just maybe, there was a chance for understanding before the wedding. But the emotional storm was far from over. Friends, family, and Lauren herself had already set the stage for a confrontation that could redefine relationships, loyalty, and trust in ways I wasn't sure I could control. The countdown to the wedding had officially become a countdown to a reckoning. And I knew that once the conversation happened, nothing would be the same again. The day finally came when Emily asked to meet in person. I felt a mix of anticipation, dread, and cautious hope. Driving to the cafe where she wanted to meet, my thoughts raced. Would she truly understand? Would this be the moment our relationship healed, or the moment it fractured beyond repair? I arrived first, choosing a corner table where we could speak privately. My hands were clammy, heart pounding, mind rehearsing every word. When Emily walked in, her expression was nervous, tentative. She gave me a small, awkward smile. "Hi," she said softly, sliding into the seat across from me. "Hi," I replied, keeping my voice calm, though I could feel tension coiling in my chest. For a moment we just sat there, eyes meeting, neither of us speaking. The air was heavy with unspoken words, years of shared memories, and recent tension. Finally, I spoke. "Emily, I need you to hear me. Not just listen, but really hear me." She nodded. "I will. I want to understand." I took a deep breath. "Lauren, her being your maid of honor. I can't pretend that it doesn't matter. It's not just about the wedding. It's about the betrayal she caused, the trust she broke. And you put her in a position of honor knowing all that. It hurts. Deeply." Emily's eyes softened, and she looked down, fiddling with her coffee cup. I didn't realize it would feel like this for you. I thought she had changed. I thought it wouldn't hurt you this way. I wanted everything to be perfect, and I thought maybe we could all move past it." "Moving past it isn't simple," I said. "It's not just about forgiveness, it's about acknowledgement, about being respected. I've tried to pretend it doesn't matter, but it does. Every time I see her posts, every time people talk about her role, I feel erased. And I can't just stand by silently." Emily swallowed hard. "I didn't mean to erase you," she whispered. "I thought I was doing the right thing. I just wanted harmony." "But at what cost?" I asked quietly, almost a whisper. "Harmony for her. At the expense of my feelings, my trust, my place in your life?" She shook her head, tears brimming in her eyes. "I never meant to hurt you. I really didn't. I love you. I wanted everything to go smoothly. I didn't think about how it would feel for you." I leaned back, exhaling slowly. "Emily, love isn't just about not hurting people intentionally. Sometimes love is acknowledging when your choices cause pain. And right now, I don't feel acknowledged." She reached across the table, taking my hand. "I get that now. I see it. I was so focused on the wedding, on making it perfect, that I forgot about what you needed. And I'm so sorry. Truly." The apology was heartfelt, and I felt the tight knot in my chest begin to loosen slightly. But there was still a part of me that remained guarded. "It's not just words," I said. "It's action. I need to see that this matters to you, that my feelings matter. Otherwise, I don't know if I can just walk into that church and pretend everything's okay." Emily nodded slowly, determination in her eyes. "I understand, and I'll show you. I want you there not just physically but emotionally. You're my sister and you always will be. We'll figure this out together." For the first time in weeks, I felt a flicker of hope. This conversation didn't erase the past or magically fix everything, but it was a start. Acknowledgement had been given, emotions had been expressed, and bridges, however fragile, were still standing. We talked for hours, going through everything, the past betrayals, my feelings of exclusion, the wedding planning, Lauren's role. Emily listened without defensiveness, without interruption, truly listening. And slowly, a sense of understanding began to form between us. When we finally left the cafe, the tension hadn't disappeared completely, but it had shifted. There was space now, space for dialogue, for repair, for compromise. I didn't yet know what the wedding day would hold, or how Lauren would behave, but I knew one thing. Emily and I had faced the confrontation honestly. We had voiced the difficult truths, and for the first time in a long while I felt seen. Driving home, I realized that standing my ground hadn't made me the villain. It had clarified the stakes, set boundaries, and demanded acknowledgement. And while the battle wasn't over, the first major step toward resolution had been taken. The countdown to the wedding was still ticking, but now, I felt ready. Ready to face whatever came next with courage, honesty, and the knowledge that my voice mattered. The days leading up to the wedding were a whirlwind of preparation, anxiety, and cautious hope. After my face-to-face with Emily, I felt more resolved, but also aware that the real test was still ahead. The confrontation had clarified boundaries, But boundaries alone wouldn't prevent tension from erupting once Lauren stepped into the spotlight. Family dynamics were more delicate than ever. Everyone seemed to be walking on eggshells around me, unsure whether to bring up the wedding, avoid it entirely, or subtly pressure me into conformity. Even friends who had supported me seemed wary, glancing nervously whenever Lauren's name came up. The first sign of trouble came at the dress fitting. Emily had invited both of us, hoping to include me in the final preparations. Lauren was already there, radiant in her floral dress, chatting with the bridesmaids and laughing in a way that made my stomach twist. She hadn't apologized, not directly to me, and her cheerful demeanor felt like a slap in the face. "Hey!" she said brightly, waving. "Excited for the big day?" I forced a polite smile. "Yeah. Looking forward to it." Emily, sensing the tension, stepped between us. "Come on, let's focus on the dresses. It's supposed to be fun." I tried to follow her lead, but every glance at Lauren reminded me of the past betrayals. I caught her looking at me a few times, too, her smile slightly too knowing, too smug. I felt my patience stretching thin. Over the next few days, subtle conflicts emerged. Lauren's social media updates flaunted her closeness with Emily, even posting behind-the-scenes photos from the fittings. Friends tagged her, commented about how perfect she looked in her role, and for the first time, I felt like an outsider in what should have been my sister's celebration. At a rehearsal dinner, the tension became more palpable. Guests, trying to maintain politeness, hovered between friendly chatter and subtle commentary. Some whispered, "I hope she comes," or, "I don't know how this will go if she doesn't show up." I felt every gaze, every expectation pressing on me. Lauren approached me at one point, smiling sweetly. "I hope we can finally get along," she said. "Emily really wants everyone to be happy." I paused, choosing my words carefully. "I hope we can too," I said, voice neutral. "But it takes more than just showing up." Her smile faltered for a fraction of a second before she recovered, moving on. I realized then that she hadn't changed in the ways that mattered most. She could pretend to be friendly, but she hadn't acknowledged the depth of the hurt she caused. Emily, sensing the growing tension, pulled me aside. "I know this is hard," she said, her voice gentle, "but I want you there. I want everyone to feel included. Can we try?" "I'll try," I said cautiously, "but I can't pretend nothing happened. I need my boundaries respected, and I need you to understand that Lauren's role doesn't erase my place in your life." Emily nodded solemnly. "I understand. I really do." The night ended with a fragile sense of truce, but the underlying tension remained. Lauren was blissfully unaware of the storm she had caused, and the guests were starting to sense the quiet conflict. Small glances, whispered comments, and subtle side conversations hinted that not everyone was comfortable, and I could feel the pressure building like a taut rope ready to snap. As I left the rehearsal dinner, I realized that the wedding wasn't just about Emily and Lauren. It was about me, my relationship with my sister, and the trust that had been strained to its limits. I had chosen to stand my ground, to demand acknowledgement and respect, but the hardest part was still ahead. Navigating the actual wedding day with all its social expectations, hidden judgments, and inevitable confrontations. The countdown continued, and with each passing day, the stakes grew higher. I knew that the moment of truth, when I would step into that church, face Lauren, and fully confront the consequences of our tangled history, was drawing closer. And I also knew that nothing would ever be the same again. The morning of the wedding arrived with an almost surreal clarity. Sunlight streamed through the hotel windows, glinting off crystal chandeliers and polished silverware, but the brightness outside contrasted sharply with the storm simmering inside me. I dressed carefully, choosing an outfit that was elegant yet understated, signaling that I was here, not to steal attention, but to assert my presence. Driving to the venue, my mind replayed the past weeks. The confrontation with Emily, the whispered judgments, Lauren's unacknowledged audacity, and the delicate balance I had struggled to maintain. Every mile brought me closer to the moment where patience, restraint, and diplomacy would be tested to their limits. I arrived first, giving myself time to breathe, collect my thoughts, and steel my nerves. The venue buzzed with activity. Florists, caterers, photographers, all moving with mechanical efficiency, unaware of the personal drama unfolding just beneath the surface. And then Lauren arrived, perfectly coiffed, radiant in a dress that screamed confidence. She swept through the lobby with an effortless charm that made everyone around her smile. But her eyes found mine almost immediately, and for a fleeting moment, the smugness I remembered was unmistakable. Emily appeared moments later, looking beautiful yet nervous. Her gaze met mine, and there was a silent acknowledgement. We had survived the confrontation, but the day itself was a battlefield. The ceremony began with the usual flurry of prelude music, handshakes, and polite chatter. Friends and family gathered, exchanging smiles, but I could feel the undercurrents of tension. Whispers, side glances, and subtle positioning made it clear that everyone was aware of the fragile truce between the sisters. Lauren, oblivious to the storm she had helped ignite, leaned over to Emily. "Can you believe how perfect everything looks?" she whispered, her tone light but her presence dominating. I felt a surge of frustration. Her ignorance of the real stakes was almost infuriating. I took my seat, attempting to remain calm, and noticed subtle cues from other guests. Some shot sympathetic glances my way, while others seemed irritated that my stance had disrupted the usual harmony of a wedding. I reminded myself, I was here for a reason, not to appease anyone else. As the music swelled and the bridal procession began, I saw Emily walking down the aisle, radiant and composed. Her eyes briefly met mine and I nodded slightly. That small gesture was enough to remind me why I had fought to be here. Not just physically, but emotionally, as a sister who demanded acknowledgement. The ceremony proceeded with all the customary vows and smiles, but the tension never fully dissipated. When Lauren delivered her maid of honor speech, I could hear the subtle edge in her tone, almost as if she were preemptively defending herself. Her words were polished, charming, but underneath, I sensed a faint self-satisfaction, a reminder that she had stepped into a role that was never truly hers to claim. Emily's eyes met mine once more during the speech. I could see her understanding, the recognition that I had endured, that I had stood firm, and that my presence here mattered in a way that went beyond social expectation. A flicker of relief passed through me, but it was tempered by the knowledge that the day was far from over. After the ceremony, the reception began. Conversations were polite, laughter filled the air, but I could feel the undercurrents of judgment and curiosity. Friends whispered, family members exchanged glances, and Lauren continued her performance of blissful innocence. Yet through it all, I remained steady. I had chosen to stand my ground, to assert my voice, and now I was living with the consequences, both visible and invisible. By the time dinner was served, subtle alliances had formed in the room. Some guests were quietly supportive, offering nods and smiles that acknowledged my stance. Others seemed irritated, uncomfortable with the disruption of the usual wedding dynamics. And Lauren? She was radiant, oblivious to the tension she had caused, yet unable to fully dominate the room with her forced charm. As the night wore on, I realized that the wedding wasn't just a celebration of Emily and her partner. It was a testament to resilience, boundaries, and honesty. I had navigated weeks of emotional storms, confrontation, and social pressure, and I was still standing. My voice had been heard, my presence respected, and my relationship with Emily had survived, however fragile it might remain. But even as I allowed myself a moment of quiet pride, I knew the real challenges were yet to come. The evening was far from over, and the undercurrents of conflict were still alive, waiting for their next moment to surface. The reception began with the usual smiles, toasts, and polite chatter. But beneath the surface, the air was charged with a quiet tension that no one could fully ignore. Every glance, every movement, every word was loaded with subtle meaning, especially when Lauren was near. It started innocuously enough. Lauren approached the table where I was sitting, holding a glass of champagne, her smile wide and calculated. "Hey, so glad you made it," she said, her tone overly cheerful, as if pretending nothing had happened would erase the past. I forced a polite smile, my hand tightening slightly around my glass. Of course, I wouldn't miss Emily's day. She laughed lightly, the sound too bright, too rehearsed. Good. I just want everything to be perfect, you know? Her gaze lingered on me a moment longer than necessary. It's just a bit awkward, isn't it? I felt the tension coil in my chest. Awkward is an understatement, I replied evenly. But we're here now, and that's what matters. She tilted her head, as if trying to read my reaction. I hope we can finally be friends. I swallowed, choosing my words carefully. Friendship requires trust, and trust takes more than words, it takes acknowledgement and respect. Her smile faltered slightly, a flicker of irritation passing across her features before she masked it. Sure, if that's what you need, she said, stepping away. The moment drew the attention of nearby guests. A few raised eyebrows, others whispered to one another. It was subtle, but everyone sensed the friction. Emily noticed it too, her eyes narrowing slightly, worried about the growing tension. Later, during the toasts, Lauren found another opportunity to assert herself. As she spoke, she glanced at me several times, her words carefully crafted, praising Emily, celebrating the wedding, and highlighting her own special bond with the bride. The undertone was unmistakable. She was trying to assert her place, reminding everyone, including me, that she held a central role. I felt my patience stretching thin. I wanted to remain calm, to maintain dignity, but the subtle provocations were relentless. A quiet fire began to burn within me, fueled by weeks of unresolved feelings and recent confrontations. After the toast, Emily pulled me aside. I know she's being difficult, she whispered, frustration and concern mingling in her voice. But can you just ignore it? For me? I shook my head, quietly firm. I can't ignore it, Emily. Not when it undermines everything we've discussed. Not when it disregards my feelings so openly. Emily sighed, clearly torn between her maid of honor, her sister, and the harmony she wanted for the day. I don't want this to ruin the day. I'm not trying to ruin it, I replied softly. I'm trying to survive it with my dignity intact. The evening progressed, and the friction became more evident. Guests whispered, some aligning with me, others with Lauren. It was a social minefield, every interaction a delicate dance of appearances and underlying tensions. Finally, the dance floor opened. Couples twirled and laughed, but Lauren made her way to the center, drawing attention with practiced charm. I felt a surge of frustration, but then Emily approached, taking my hand. Come dance, she said gently. Let's try to find some joy here, just us. For a moment, I considered refusing, letting the simmering tension dominate the night. But I took a deep breath, nodded, and stepped onto the floor. As we moved together, I felt a small measure of relief. For this brief moment, it was just Emily and me. The conflict, the gossip, and Lauren's provocations faded slightly, replaced by a sisterly connection that had survived despite everything. Yet the undercurrents remained. Lauren lingered nearby, watching, smiling, and occasionally nudging conversations toward me. It was a reminder that the day was far from over, and that my struggle for acknowledgement, respect, and emotional survival was still very much alive. By the end of the first dances, I realized that the wedding wasn't just a celebration. It was a test of endurance, patience, and courage. Every glance, every word, every interaction carried weight. And while I had survived the confrontation so far, the night was far from its conclusion. The emotional storms were still brewing, waiting for the next spark to ignite them. By the time the evening had progressed to speeches and dances, the tension in the room was almost tangible. Guests whispered behind their hands, glancing nervously at me, at Lauren, and at Emily, as if the fragile truce could shatter at any moment. I had managed to stay composed, keeping my distance and maintaining civility, but I knew it wouldn't take much to push things over the edge. And then it happened. Lauren, ever the showstopper, decided to give an impromptu toast. Standing beside Emily, she raised her glass with a dazzling smile, her voice clear and confident. To Emily, my beautiful friend, my sister by heart, and to all of us celebrating love tonight. The room applauded politely, but my pulse began to quicken. Her words were superficially sweet, but there was a subtle undercurrent. She was claiming the spotlight, asserting her importance, and overshadowing not only Emily's day but the weeks of tension I had endured. And of course, Lauren continued, turning her gaze directly toward me, I'm so glad that everyone is here, including those who had doubts about this day. It's nice to see that we can all put aside past grievances for the sake of love and family. A ripple of murmurs ran through the room. I felt my stomach twist, my hands clenching around my glass. It was clear to everyone present that she was talking about me. The polite applause felt like a spotlight on my discomfort, and whispers erupted from several corners. I could feel Emily's eyes on me, worried, her hand tightening briefly around her own glass. Guests shifted uneasily, some glancing at me with sympathy, others with curiosity or judgment. I realized that my next move would define not just my own dignity, but the perception of the evening, my relationship with Emily, and how Lauren's provocations would be addressed. Taking a deep breath, I stood. Silence fell instantly, all eyes on me. The room seemed to contract, the air thick with anticipation. Thank you, Lauren. I began, my voice calm but firm. I appreciate the toast, but I want to clarify something for everyone here to understand. This isn't about grudges or about making anyone's day difficult. It's about respect, acknowledgement, and the truth of relationships. A few eyebrows lifted. Lauren's smile faltered slightly, a flicker of unease crossing her face. I've been hurt by actions in the past, I continued. And while I am here today, I am here on my own terms. I have communicated openly with Emily, and she has listened, and that's important. But this isn't a moment for public jabs or subtle digs, because every person here deserves sincerity, not performance. Lauren's lips pressed into a thin line. Murmurs spread through the guests again, some nodding, some shifting uncomfortably in their seats. I held their attention, meeting Emily's eyes, finding reassurance there. She nodded slightly, proud of my courage, supportive yet cautious. I paused, letting the room absorb my words. Then, softer but no less firm, I added, I came here because I love Emily. I will celebrate with her. I will dance. I will toast. But I will not accept actions that dismiss or undermine my feelings. We can all enjoy this day, but honesty matters. The silence lingered for a moment, and then a few guests applauded quietly, supportive of the integrity I had shown. Lauren's smile returned, slightly forced, and she raised her glass again, a subtle nod acknowledging my stance. The tension didn't evaporate, but the dynamic had shifted. Emily came to my side, taking my hand gently. Thank you, she whispered. I know that wasn't easy. I nodded, feeling a mix of relief and lingering adrenaline. The public confrontation had been necessary. It had been uncomfortable, yes, but it had asserted boundaries, demanded recognition, and made it clear that I wouldn't be sidelined or silenced. The rest of the evening proceeded with cautious civility. Lauren remained in the spotlight at moments, but the power dynamic had changed. Guests were aware that I was not a passive observer, and my presence now carried weight and meaning. As the night drew on, I realized that this wedding had become more than a celebration of love. It was a crucible of honesty, courage, and boundaries. I had stood firm, faced a delicate social battlefield, and emerged with my dignity intact. And while the evening still held surprises, conflicts, and subtle tensions, I had learned that acknowledging one's own worth was as important as celebrating love itself. The wedding day finally drew to a close. Guests were departing, cars filled the streets, and the echo of music faded into the night. The relief of the day's events mixed with lingering tension, creating a strange emotional haze. I found a quiet corner outside the venue, breathing in the cool evening air, trying to process everything that had just unfolded. Emily approached me, her smile tired but genuine. "You were amazing today," she said softly, wrapping me in a brief, heartfelt hug. "I know it wasn't easy, and I appreciate you being here, fully present, despite everything." I nodded, a mixture of exhaustion and quiet satisfaction washing over me. "I'm glad I came. I wanted to support you, and I also needed to be honest about my feelings. It wasn't just about the wedding. It was about standing up for myself, for boundaries, for what matters to me." Emily sighed, eyes downcast. "I realize now how much I underestimated your feelings. I thought everything could be smoothed over with appearances and smiles. I didn't see how deeply the past hurt ran. I hope we can rebuild some of what was strained." "I think we can," I said cautiously. "It'll take time, but being honest today was a start. I feel like I was finally seen, and that matters more than anything else." She nodded, a sense of relief passing between us. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't magically healed. But the foundation of honesty and acknowledgement had been laid. Meanwhile, Lauren had already left, her final social media post of the day radiating cheerfulness. Despite the public tension and my quiet confrontation, she maintained her facade, seemingly unaware or unwilling to acknowledge the deeper impact of her presence and actions. I realized that some people wouldn't change, wouldn't see the harm they caused unless it directly affected them. And that was okay. I didn't need her acknowledgement to validate my own experience. Family members approached intermittently, some offering congratulations, some hesitantly checking in. My parents were quieter than usual, processing the subtle conflicts of the day, and I sensed a newfound respect in their eyes. They saw that I had handled myself with dignity, and while opinions varied among relatives, the truth of my stance had left an impression. As the night waned, I reflected on the lessons of the past weeks. The wedding had been more than a ceremony. It had been a test of patience, resilience, and the courage to stand firm in the face of subtle provocations and social pressure. I had learned that boundaries are essential. Without them, relationships can erode quietly, leaving lingering resentment. Honesty is a form of strength. Speaking truth, even in uncomfortable moments, creates clarity and respect. Acknowledgement matters. Being seen and understood is sometimes more important than compliance or compromise. Dignity can be preserved. Even amidst social tension and conflict, one can assert self-worth without cruelty or vindictiveness. Emily joined me one last time outside, taking a deep breath and smiling. "I'm proud of you," she said quietly. "I think we'll both remember today, not just for the wedding, but for how we faced the hard truths together." I smiled back, feeling the weight of weeks of tension finally lighten, just enough to allow a sense of closure without pretending everything was perfect. "We'll keep building from here," I said. "It won't always be easy, but at least we've started honestly." And as the last guests departed and the lights dimmed, I realized that this chapter, fraught with betrayal, pressure, and tension, had brought something unexpected: clarity, recognition, and a renewed sense of self. The storm had passed, not without scars, but with lessons and resilience that would endure far beyond the wedding day. The days after the wedding were quieter, a contrast to the chaos, tension, and emotional storms of the preceding weeks. Life had shifted in subtle ways, and I found myself reflecting on everything that had transpired. The wedding had been a crucible, testing relationships, boundaries, and the courage to stand firm in the face of pressure. Emily reached out first, sending a heartfelt message. "Thank you for being there. Not just physically, but emotionally. I know it wasn't easy. I hope we can rebuild our relationship, stronger and more honest." I replied thoughtfully, feeling a weight lift from my shoulders. "I'm glad we're on the same page. It won't be perfect, but I feel like we've laid a foundation. I love you, and I want that to guide us forward." We spoke several times over the next few days, sharing candid conversations about trust, boundaries, and respect. There were moments of awkwardness, moments of laughter, and even moments of vulnerability. Each conversation reinforced the idea that honesty, though difficult, was essential for sustaining a meaningful relationship. Lauren, on the other hand, faded quietly from the narrative of my life. She continued posting online, but her attempts to dominate the spotlight no longer held the same power over me. I realized that her recognition or lack thereof was irrelevant to my sense of self. The validation I sought came from standing firm, being seen, and maintaining my dignity. Family dynamics slowly normalized, though subtle ripples remained. Some relatives were still puzzled by the tension, others quietly supportive of my stance. Over time, the importance of honesty and boundaries became apparent to them as well. I sensed a newfound respect in many of their interactions, a recognition that relationships weren't always easy or straightforward, but they required integrity and accountability. Reflecting on the experience, I understood the lessons clearly. Strength isn't authenticity. I had feared confrontation, but speaking my truth with calm conviction reinforced my self-respect. Boundaries protect, not isolate. Establishing limits doesn't create division. It ensures that relationships are grounded in mutual respect. Love and loyalty are earned, not assumed. Emily and I had a bond, but it required acknowledgement, empathy, and effort from both sides. Letting go is sometimes necessary. Some conflicts, like Lauren's influence, couldn't be fully resolved, but I could control how much power they had over me. One evening, Emily and I met for coffee, just the two of us, without any external pressures or performances. We talked, laughed, and reminisced about childhood memories. For the first time in weeks, the lingering tension felt distant. The storm hadn't disappeared entirely, but we had navigated it together, emerging with a clearer understanding of each other. As I walked home that night, I felt a profound sense of closure. The wedding had tested me, challenged me, and even hurt me, but it had also shown me the value of honesty, courage, and self-respect. I realized that while some relationships would require ongoing effort, others might remain complicated, and that was okay. Life wasn't about perfection. It was about integrity, resilience, and choosing to stand firm in moments that mattered. I also recognized that my presence at the wedding had been more than symbolic. It was an assertion of my identity, my voice, and my right to be acknowledged. I had navigated whispers, subtle provocations, and social pressures, and I had maintained my dignity throughout. That, more than anything, was the victory. In the end, the story wasn't just about a wedding, a betrayal, or a family dispute. It was about growth, self-respect, and the courage to demand recognition without apology. I had learned that standing up for myself didn't make me selfish. It made me human, capable of love, resilience, and honesty. And as I closed this chapter of my life, I felt ready to move forward, embracing the complexity of relationships, the lessons of conflict, and the quiet strength that comes from knowing your worth and refusing to let anyone diminish it. The storm had passed, the skies were clear, and I was finally at peace with myself.